and human rights and against all racism. So without further ado, can I ask Hugh Lanning to take the floor?
Mosque, the organisers and all of you for coming. It's becoming a bit of a familiar pattern list. We were having one of our interminable meetings with the Met Police about routes and demos and so on, and they said we were the only organisations they ever came across who consistently underestimated the number of people who were going to turn up at our demonstrations and rallies and so on. That shows, though, the amazing level of political support there is across all communities, all faiths and all organisations. And I just want to go through, partly, if you like, some perspective on what's happening at the moment, but also about what you can do going forward, because it's great the amount of support here, it's great the amount of support we've had on demonstrations, but it's clear at the moment it's still not enough in terms of what we need to do going forward. And I just want to start with a question about, you know, what the Palestinians ever did to deserve what's happening to them. And if you go back to the creation of the UN in 1948, when there was a vote to create Israel, it ignored the fact that there was a lot of people already living there, and that the Palestinians were being promised by the world a state ever since, and we have never delivered on that promise. And that's what gets so frustrating about the media and the BBC and so on, is that they ignore the historical reality and bring it to, well, what happened last week or what happened the day before, and you cannot get to the solution through that. And the other thing I just want to mention, I saw you've got a meeting coming up on the one-state and the two-state solution, but I think the reality at the moment is that Israel wants a no-state solution. It wants to keep Palestine and the Palestinians imprisoned, behind the wall, and make sure that they are subjugated, and it wants them to surrender and give up their rights and entitlements. And I know from talking to Palestinians that's never going to happen, but equally it is clear that they are trying to normalise the current situation. This is something that the world ought to accept as the reality, while they build more settlements and take more and more land to make any solution impossible going forward. And there have been loads of meetings, and one of the ones that I was invited to recently was an event that takes place every year in Dorset called the Toll Paddle Festival. And it's a trade union festival to celebrate, commemorate, if you like, when trade unions were born and challenged. And there was a group on there called the Men They Couldn't Hang, folk group, and they were singing a song, and there was one phrase within it that I keep on coming back to, and the phrase was it's not a sin to fight for your freedom. And it seems to me that what we've got to get across in our campaign is that is what the Palestinians are doing. They're fighting for their freedom and fighting to have a free state of their own. And you see the Israeli propaganda that's come out. Do you remember Hebron, where this originally was meant to have started? And then you go through East Jerusalem, and then you get onto its missiles, and then its tunnels, the sheer surprise that you imprison people and they might build a tunnel. You know, what a shock is that? There's quite a good tradition between tunnels and prisons if you go over the years. And then the kidnap that wasn't a kidnap. It is any excuse to relentlessly push forward their agenda and the massacre and killing of innocent civilians and children, and it's as if the whole world has stood back, gone on holiday, literally gone on summer holiday, and the politicians of all parties, all governments have said it's okay, you can carry on, you can go ahead with this. And I think it is really good and important that we now start challenging the whole role of Western governments, the US, the UK, in funding and supporting the Israeli military machine. That is what we do. We pay them for it. And it's good some people coming out for an arms embargo. It's a bit late because we have provided them with the weapons, we've cooperated on the technology, we give them the money for doing it. But going forward, we need to ensure that there is pressure that makes sure that any weapon that we buy from, that we sell to, that is tested, that is used in the occupation, is used to kill innocent people, we have no part on it, because it's our blood, our guilt that is associated with that if we allow it to happen. And also it's our money that is going into that. We are paying for the occupation, we are paying for the military machine. And it's important that we challenge, not just through the embargo, but I also think that we need to make sure that Israel is held accountable for the war crimes that it is committing. And that means going to the International Criminal Court, supporting that. But it is, you get the media debates about all missiles and so on, and you'll notice there's always an accurate count for the number of missiles that are meant to have gone from Gaza, never the number that have gone the other way around. And there is a real difference. When Israel targets, it knows who's there, it knows their children, it knows that there are women and civilians there, and it still goes ahead deliberately and kills those people. And that is the war crime that they're committing day after day after day, that we must hold them accountable for. And therefore, how are we going to go about it? I mean, I know you've been watching the telly and seeing all of the things about the horror that unveils, comes out in front of you day after day after day. I just want to point to 4 areas where there's things that we can do. And the first is political. I mean, the amount of, if you like, local support there has been, I mean, has been something that we've never seen in the PSC, and I don't think politicians have seen. Immediately after the first massacre and onslaught, we had an electronic email letter writing campaign, and over 50,000 emails from constituents were sent to their MPs, some getting more than 2,000, 2,500, 2,600 of their own constituents, and they're saying this is the issue that they've had more letters on than any issue than they can remember. And that's the sort of pressure that we need to maintain going forward. And to do that, the PSC with other organisations is going to, not this Saturday but the Saturday after, try and have a local day of action, of protest, of boycott, and also taking up political pressure, and also looking to have an early lobby when all the MPs come back off their summer holidays on the 9th of September, so that we have a mass lobby to make sure that we follow up that political pressure with them, as well as the protests and demonstrations that are taking place. And yes, we want everybody to go on the demonstration. We want the demonstration on Saturday to be the biggest that we've had of the ones that we've had so far. And I think it's just amazing that in the last 2-3 weeks we've organised 2 of the, if not the 2 biggest demonstrations that have taken place under the life of this government. And we're about to repeat that again. And that shows the level of commitment and support there is for the things that we're doing. But I just want to repeat a phone call. Our Vice Chair is in Jerusalem at the moment. His brother's getting married, or has got married now. And he phoned up last night and was talking to us and saying that for the Palestinians, the demonstrations are the things that give them real hope and confidence. They see the tens of thousands of people out on the streets. They see it on Twitter and Facebook, and it gives them a lift. So it is really important that we keep that going, and we make sure that people in Palestine and Jerusalem know what's going on, and in Gaza as well. The third area is obviously boycott, divestment and sanctions. As the campaign goes on, yes, there's protest, but we need to build the political pressure more and more. And boycott, divestment and sanctions, which the civil society organisations have called for, is the tactic that we can use to make sure we apply. And there's been successes on SodaStream with the closure of the shop in Brighton, with John Lewis refusing to stop SodaStream anymore. And what we're now targeting is the other places, Robert Dias, Argos and so on, who also do SodaStream. G4S want to keep the pressure up, but we've got a new target for you, and that's Garnier. I don't know if you have been seeing the pictures of how they've supplied shampoo and creams and stuff free to IDF, so that, and to some people who'd arrived, that the PSC office, we've had to nick half of the CND to cover the space and make sure we've got enough room for all of the volunteers. The website is not coping with what we're doing. Social media has gone through the roof in terms of the level of support and so on. There is an amazing amount of support out there, but that we need to tap it. And I've said at a few meetings, there was a similar outcry around the time of Cast Lead, and a lot of donations and a lot of protest. But actually it dissipated. And what we need to make sure this time is that we maintain the pressure. It's very clear that a ceasefire is not enough. there needs to be a solution to the problem, there needs to be a lifting of the siege, there needs to be an end to the occupation, and there needs to be a free Palestine. And to do that, we need to organise, organise and organise. And that means getting people involved, as you are, in local campaigns, and making sure that we keep that pressure going as we go forward. And the way to do that, something that Mustafa Baghouti came over and said, is for us to have multipliers. People who talk to people in your families, in your workplaces, in your organisations, in your faith groups. Make sure that you're spreading the story. And the story is a real one and a graphic one, and we're winning public opinion despite the media. That is because people are talking about it. And I call it sort of like a looking glass war, that it's sort of unbelievable that you have a situation where it's that Israel kills over 1,000 civilians and children, and Hamas kills less than 100 people, mainly soldiers, yet it's Hamas who are meant to be the terrorists rather than the Israeli state. They've got it back to front, and that's the sort of story that we need to be telling as we go forward. So that, thank you very much for coming. Make sure you're there on Saturday. There's loads of meetings and protest things, but really what we want you to do is go forth and multiply. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. Okay, we're not gonna get a stand for this, but thank you, Hugh. Thank you for your continued chairmanship and leadership of your organisation and continued fight to ensure the Palestinian self-determination, the end to violence, and the end of violation of international law. Thank you for those